Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Multifamily Hangout. We're super duper excited today about our guest, about all the topics we're going to have to cover during our 1 hour conversation here. Thank you to all of us that are joining us here live on LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm Adrian Danila, your host. I want to start by thanking our sponsors that making this broadcast possible. Apartment Snapshot, GPS Roof Leak Repairs, and Kairos Water. Chris, take it away, and please welcome our guest today.
Thank you, Adrian, and we're excited to have so many people here today for our amazing guest. I'm newer to this podcast, but my journey in multifamily has been an exciting one. And when I get to meet people like Alisa White, who we have as a guest today, it really gets me jazzed and excited to hear stories and to be able to hear as they share what they've learned with other people. It brings me a lot of joy. Melissa is a phenomenal person to meet in real life. She has an incredible story, journey, but I love what she shares with people beyond just work and how she incorporates that. She's also a ton of fun. So without further ado, welcome Melissa to the show today. We're really excited to have you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Nice to be here and speak with you all. So thank you so much.
Melissa not only is the managing director at Perennial Properties here in Atlanta, she is also the new chair of the Atlanta Apartment Association. So she has a lot of jobs as well as an amazing parent.
Alisa, welcome
Hi.
to the Multifamily Hangout. I do want to start by asking you to share a little bit about your journey in property management. Your career has been an amazing career so far, stellar, and a lot of us here and in the audience will like to hear more about how you got to where you are today.
I want to know, you and I go way back. I'm honored to be here having this conversation, and I've loved witnessing and being a part of your journey, but we go way, way back. So much fun that we're here today having this conversation. I started actually on the vendor side, which I love sharing that. I started with the locator service here in Atlanta, and I was in college at the time working to get my bachelor's of science. I worked in the hospital for many years as a respiratory therapist. I also worked as a leasing agent, and I tease often that I decided I wanted to make less money and work more days. And I left the hospital. But really, I really enjoyed property management because we get to touch people's lives in such a different way, which is what originally attracted me to being a respiratory therapist, working closely with families and caring for people and, adding meaning and my time to other people's lives. And I realized I was able to do that through property management. I started out as a leasing professional. After I left the locator business, they were kind enough to introduce me. Because of my school schedule, I needed to change my schedule. And I had this great friend at the locator business that said, hey, I've got this 19-year-old going on 30. So I've always kind of had that, old spirit. I started as a leasing agent and worked my way up from there. I was an assistant manager, community manager, regional marketing and training, and I worked for a lot of different companies. I've always had the privilege and opportunity to work closely with owners and getting their viewpoint and their perspective on things, which I think really helped establish my career. Later on, I was running and busy, and then I had little ones, and I had an opportunity to slow down. And I reached out to my friend, Christy Eash, who introduced me to Perennial Properties. And I wanted to keep growing and I wanted to keep being challenged, but I wasn't wanting to travel as much as I was. Partnering with Perennial, we're owner managed. We're based out of Atlanta. We build new developments. We manage retail space. I work closely city and local. So Perennial was a perfect fit for me, especially in the time in my life where I was wanting to be challenged, but also wanting to be a hands-on mom.
Trying to be a hands-on dad as well, and so it's great to meet other parents and hear stories. So I want to definitely hear more of that. I'd love to hear, and maybe it relates to what you just said, is thinking about the last your years of experience. Maybe what are some of the things that you've experienced and you've seen change in the industry maybe some of the significant changes that you've seen through your career, and maybe as it relates as you transitioning to being a parent.
I'm sure everyone feels this way, but I absolutely love my generation because we have seen so much change so quickly, right? From dial up, I get to say, oh, we had rotary phones and we had dial up and now quickly to having, computers on our cell phones, right? And how quickly technology has changed in my life and over my career. So when I started in the industry, we had paper guest cards. We had daily logs. We used to mail our invoices off to corporate and we'd have a tape roll. So I'm so grateful that I got to experience that part of multifamily where we were still, using DOS and, control F and control, all the things. Now we have mobile maintenance. Technology has really changed since I started in the industry, and COVID really catapulted that. I mean, it just supercharged the conversation that I really was desperately wanting us all to have, making a change in how we were operating through technology. So I'd say technology, and I know for a lot of different reasons, but it's very true for me. And now to bring AI into the conversation. So to go from paper cards and faxes to having automated, responses and legal guidance and all that through technology has been definitely one of the biggest changes because it changed the dynamic of how we operated. And our industry was also treated more as a profession. And I've also seen schools provide our industry with courses so that people can graduate with degrees and come out already more knowledgeable and prepared for leadership and management roles within our industry as well. So education and technology have vastly changed since I started in the industry.
I do want to acknowledge those in the audience that are joining us today. We have unprecedented numbers. And that goes to show the love that people have for you. I'm very serious. I'm very touched to see this very high number of people. And I wanted to say at the same time, there's other multifamily events at the national level online that also have dozens of people on them. And because, people choose to come to be here to see you, this is a statement of who you are, what type of person you are. We're very excited to see that happening.
Adrian, can I ask, is this the highest live audience we've ever had? This is incredible.
It's actually the highest.
Amazing.
Hi, everyone.
I just
actually the highest. I can't believe the numbers, like the number increases by the minute. With that being said, for those of you in our audience that are joining us today, right, you're hanging out with us, drop some love in the comments for Melissa, drop some questions for her. We will take questions from the audience. Thank you again for joining us today. I want you to share some of your journey with the Atlanta Apartment Association. We're very fortunate or blessed group of people in this industry to kind of have someone having our back all the time. I remember, like you said, you and I go way back, since our Gray Star days, like very, very long time ago, right? We're almost like ashamed to say how long ago that was, right? It's probably like 15, 16 years. I'm just gonna say it. We came such a long way, we as a professionals, but also I've seen you over at the events, being involved, volunteering, doing whatever it took. And here you are, the chair of the Atlanta Apartment Association. I want you to share this part of your journey with us here and how, what were the things that, help you with this part of your career to become one of the very first female chairs of the association and the first Black female of the Apartment Association.
Thank you so much. Yes, we're celebrating, we as in the Atlanta Apartment Association, we're going to be celebrating our 50-year anniversary next year. So this is year 49, and I believe I'm the 8th or 9th female in our 49-year history. And how it started, the way you just described the association is so great because it's so great to know we have a group of knowledgeable, capable people that always have our back. I, like many people, didn't realize the vastness of our industry, politically, legal, like all these different things. Where we would need added support and knowledge base and the ability to come together collectively to share experiences. And so I started with the association, interestingly enough, related to education, which I just talked about. We were engaging with a lot of new people within the industry. And so I volunteered on the education committee. And when I volunteered on the education committee, I absolutely loved the people at the time. Jane Fullwood was the staff member, and Kimberly Cable, who's still with the association, oversaw education. I worked on the education committee for over 10 years. And in that time frame, I was really able to help us push technology, right? Because in the beginning, I was like, this is kind of boring. That like the conversations that were being had from a generational standpoint, I felt left out. I felt, I was in classrooms and universities where, we were beyond even PowerPoint presentations, right? But interacting with our phones and computers. And so when I would go to a AAA class, I was like, wow, we're missing something here. At first, I didn't really think to push it because I was like, well, who's going to care if I have anything to say? And then I was getting more and more involved because my job requested me to. It was actually a job requirement that I had more involvement with the association. And the more I got involved, I realized also a disconnect from my cultural background with the music that was being played, the imagery that was used in advertising. I didn't feel connected. I didn't feel seen. And I didn't have an initial feeling of, oh, let me get more involved. I was like kind of drawn away from it. Luckily for me, people at the time were like, no, get more involved. Use your voice, have the conversation. And I did. And I shared, easily with Jane Fullwood because she was very open at the, always. She's always been open. I was going to say at the time, but she's always been open. She's an amazing woman. And she was like, oh, we didn't think of that. Or, oh, yes, we could definitely include that. Or let's have a conversation about how we can do that. And again, a lot of different things over time, 08, 09, when the market plummeted. And then COVID, there was just a lot of requirements where we had to accelerate things in order to increase business and operations. So what I realized, it wasn't that people didn't want to have the conversation or didn't want to make change as much as there maybe weren't enough voices of saying, hey, we need this change, or maybe a consistency in that expression. And I was very grateful that, there have been many women before me who broke those barriers and allowed for me to be able to come in and have those conversations. And I know that there are many minority women who were just as successful, if not more, and had, great successes in our industry and didn't have the opportunity to be given the title of chair of the association. I'm very honored that I am the first Black female chair, but I do not take on this opportunity without recognizing all those that came before me and allowed me to stand on their shoulders. And I'm grateful for the association for being so open to a variety of changes that we've made over the 15 plus years I've been a part of the association now, and working on the executive committee the last 4 years or 5 years or so have been a great honor. The staff is amazing. That's something that we're really pushing for continuation. There's more work to be done. We've yet to have our first open LGBTQ plus chair of the association. And there are other minority groups. And so I want to make sure that there's a understanding that every voice, every perspective and life experience is needed and welcomed, and the association has a desire for us to continue moving onward and upward.
I came from California, Melissa, and moving to Atlanta, it's incredible to get involved with AAA and then obviously GAA and the other associations. But I feel like there is such a strong connection, not only between the people in the industry and people like yourself who are opening opportunities, pulling chairs out for other people to come join the conversation. And so I think about people like yourself. I always talk about how at the national level, right? I didn't know my voice. I'm Latino and being welcomed in. So that massive shout out to you for that. What's really interesting, and I'm kind of want to get your thoughts around this, because Atlanta is a special place for real estate, for multifamily, and having Andre Dickens come to the Apartment Association event and seeing how you interact with the city. I wanted to get your take on, why do you think Atlanta is different? Why do you think Atlanta has been so successful in partnering with the government, partnering with the mayor's office, and then maybe, whether it's other associations and how you work together with them? But I kind of like to hear your thoughts about Atlanta, not so much of competition, but why Atlanta does so well.
My immediate thought is because of the history of Atlanta, right? Because of the history of Georgia. I mean, really, when you think about, the history the United States of America and the role Georgia played in our history. And then the history of Atlanta that played a significant role during the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. And when you look at the level of work and the level of impact that people in this city have given and sacrificed in order for everybody to have an opportunity to have a life here in Atlanta, I think that is it's a natural connection, right? Because of the history that we've had to overcome and continue pushing the work locally and state. I think it's built in, but we have to keep having it and pushing it and reconnecting at times, right? Because every governor and every mayor of Atlanta have not always seen eye to eye, but the recognition that Atlanta is a city that has the capability to be as strong and as diverse as it is, every governor and every federal and state level official have had to come back and have those conversations, even on the city level. So I definitely think it's contributed to our history here and the hard work that was done during the civil rights movement and the recognition that we're going to continue to move forward and press.
Alisa, I want to continue the conversation, stay kind of on the same in the same area with Atlanta Apartment Association. And I want to ask you to share some of the amazing initiatives that you're leading this year as a chair of the Apartment Association, and then just kind of try to project us into the future, right? Beyond your role, because I know this is limited, right? It's just for 1 year. Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah. So then, try to project, like try to open that window into the future and project into the future and try to take us with you into the future. So 2024, what should we expect from the association? And then beyond that.
2024 is a significant year for a lot of reasons, but the main one is that it's an election year. And so I'm sure we've all recognized, whether it's on a federal level, a state level, or a city level, when it's an election year, it's a big deal. And this time we have the election season for the president of the United States. And that decision is going to play a factor into how business is done in the state of Georgia. Not just throughout the country, but for us specifically, there's a lot of things pending, a lot of big policies and bills and legislation that is pending that is very important to how we do business here in the state. And this presidential election is going to play a big role in that. We're going to see some of what we already have in place kind of stay status quo. We don't expect that interest rates are going to change drastically this year. So that's going to continue to impact development and refinancing and capital investments. Therefore, operational efficiency is going to be significant. So we're going to see the association play a big role through education and through legislation. Education, because our industry is so fluid right now with people coming in the industry, and so training and the necessity of people having an awareness for training and what's needed and ease of training from company to company. And then legislation. We have an amazing government affairs team at the Atlanta Apartment Association led by Stephen Davis, and he does a phenomenal job. We're all getting ready to head out to DC in a couple of weeks, actually. Really to push for our areas of concern. Legislation is going to be big this year. We're really looking for more government support when it comes to tort reform, right? When we talk about property insurance and risk and liability and, what our companies are doing. So on the education side, training people how to be prepared for that. And then on the legislative side, making sure we have support so that small businesses, big businesses, and new businesses feel comfortable doing business in the state of Georgia. In the future, 10 years from now, so outside of 2024, what does that look like? I think it could be so many different things. I think AI is going to play a tremendous role. I know over the last couple of years, we've been talking about centralization and all these different focus points. And I think some of that's definitely going to come true. I think AI is going to be a huge game changer this year. 2.0 version of all the chat GPT, how that's going to play into operations. My hope is that it just makes us all more efficient and better use of our time. I don't think we should have a fear of it replacing jobs as much as it should be enhancing the jobs that we have and all of us having better use of our time again and how we're doing business. So I think things are going to look a lot different though. Just even 10 years from now, how we lease apartments, how people gain access to move in, what the communication style is going to be. I think we're going to see a lot more remote. I will be interested if leasing offices are still in existence in the next 10 to 15 years. I think there's an opportunity where we're going to see a lot more virtual and appointment scheduling. And I think even on the maintenance side, we're going to see a lot more of that. Customer service still hyper focused, but it's like, hey, yes, we will meet you and we will do a tour versus having people in the office for people just to drive by and stop in. I imagine that in the future, we're going to have a lot more scheduling of tours outside of the self-service opportunities that are in place now with self-guided tours and, key kiosks for people to pick up keys for move-in. And I think we're going to see that impact our service side, how we complete work orders and scheduling of work orders and how we manage emergency work orders as well.
You hit it on the head. I've learned so much by going to Washington, D.C. and being a part of the advocacy every year to learn about the localities and then the national aspects, because it is so unique from market to market. I want to dig in on something you talked about, which, obviously there's so many different things you're thinking about. The balance of life. You think about trying to advance your career. You think about, as many people on this call probably are, and leading, but also you think about all the things you need to do in your work from day to day. And then you think about your family and raising kids and making sure you're not missing out on that time in those years. So I'd love, maybe some nuggets from you. This would be beneficial to me, but as well as some people in the audience is like, what advice do you have? And maybe how do you balance these various aspects, especially when you're in a management role where you need to be thinking about others' livelihood as well as your own, and whether that's team development, hiring, and then the financial aspects of running a business.
It does take a village. I'm very lucky that my village is local. And my mother-in-law has lived in the city of Atlanta since we started having children. So it takes a village. And a phrase I say a lot is we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And what that means is, when you're growing your family, when you're doing a lot of different things, you're doing it for the first time. And I think a lot of times we think, oh, I have to already know how to do this. And we don't. We have to be open to what that experience is like. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. It takes a village. Ask for help. Be open to your plan changing, right? What you thought it was going to look like versus what the reality of it is. And most importantly, knowing what your priorities are. I thought at one stage, my priority was having more. I wasn't chasing a title as much as I was chasing responsibilities, right? I wanted to be the one that influenced what technology we use, what our policy and our procedures were. Oftentimes that meant my title grew in order to be the one who dictated or, directed those conversations. In that, though, I realized, like we just talked about, wait, if I'm going to continue to do this at company A, this may not work because I've got these little children. And specifically, it stuck out for me when I had our second child, our daughter, and our oldest, who was only like 2.5, was pulling my suitcase out. And he knew every Sunday, Mommy was packing her suitcase and I had to hit the road for a bit. And as he got older, he looked at me one day and he said, Mom, I really wish you were at my practices. I was like, but I'm at every game, bud. Like, I'm always at your games. And he goes, yeah, but I want you at my practices too. And so I had to listen to what my family was asking of me and what was a priority for me. And then also being patient and saying, hey, you know what? Right now, I need to find a company where I can continue doing things that make me passionate and energized, because that is important, right? When we give up too much of ourselves, then we're not our best selves, right? So then I'm not the best mom, or I'm not the best at work because I'm not feeling curious and engaged and pushed. But also it was important for me that, I was at those practices. So that became a new priority for me. And so that had to look different for me, right? I changed how many communities I manage, what size company I work for. In our industry, we definitely run by how many units do you manage, right? Like, how big is your company? How big is your team? And so I had to change that perspective. What was success for me? And success for me was making Perennial one of the top management companies, top owners that larger companies wanted to operate like we do. Wanted to look at our team members and say, oh my gosh, they work at Perennial. We need to hire them, right? Because I wasn't going to compete on unit count because that's not where my focus was, because I wanted my time management. But I wanted to make sure that our team ran just as fast, just as smart, and just as well as larger organizations, and making us a competitor within the marketplace based on how we operate.
Alisa, the next question is, well, first of all, I'm starting with a statement. The journey to the top could feel lonely at times, very lonely. Is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, and that speaks right back to being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Yes,
Okay.
I agree with that comment.
How do you overcome that feeling of loneliness, of feeling alone?
I think, the best way we do in all things, and realizing we're not the first ones to do it. I'll reference back to being a mother. I remember when it was time to actually give birth. I was like freaking out. And I was just like, you know what? Hundreds of thousands of women have done this before me. I'm not alone in this, right? And so when I was pursuing my career growth and new job opportunities, I'm not the first person to have done this. I may be the first person at this age, at this time, in this phase, but I'm not the first person to pursue a dream, right? And I often tell myself, we placed a man on the moon. I surely can figure out how to make paperless leasing work, right? So that would also be my standing viewpoint of, we placed a person on the moon. We can figure this out. We've overcome in so many different things in life. This too can be figured out. And so I place myself intentionally with a lot of peers, with a mentor networking group intentionally, so people I could lean to. And that was intentionally done through partnering with women of color that were mothers and married, partnering myself with white men who were already in position of power, partnering myself with women who were already holding the position I was looking for, partnering myself with people who were retired. I wanted all the viewpoints of the angles to the path I was seeking, and having an understanding so that way I could lean in and hear their experience, knowing that my path may not be the same. 100% acknowledging, like, hey, theirs might have been a little easier, theirs might have been a little harder, but at least having some sort of viewpoint, right? To know what the light at the end of that tunnel meant, so that I would be more prepared for that. So really setting up a network, and that network also included people that would hold a mirror to my face and hold me accountable. That included people who also held me to ensure that what I was seeking was not just self-serving, but what was my purpose, wasn't in alignment with what I felt the calling on my life is, right? Why am I here? What is the calling on my life? So my faith in alignment with my network is how I have been able to overcome the moments and feelings of loneliness and imposter syndrome, which is a phrase now, right? That is more commonly known now, right? Like, do I deserve this? Like, is it, like, what did I do to get here? Like, why do I belong here? Having that circle of people hold that mirror up to me, and then, people specifically in my circle of faith holding it up and saying, is this an ego-driven thing or is this a purpose-driven thing? And for me, it's important to make sure that that alignment is purpose-driven. And so sometimes that means sitting still and being okay where I am, and embracing what I have.
You kind of answered partially the question I'm about to ask. You surround yourself with a lot of experts, smart people, unique and diverse opinions and thoughts. But I'm curious, in real estate, there's hundreds of events happening, whether it's locally across the country. You've got all different sorts, right? And now I think thousands of suppliers, but you have incredible data and people putting out information on the internet. Where do you go, and how do you stay updated on like the industry trends and best practices?
That's a great question. And it's really meaningful to me because, as I mentioned, Perennial is owner based and local to the state of Georgia, which I often refer to as my perennial bubble, right? And I have to get out of my perennial bubble because I want to know what's going on in the rest of the world. One of the things I love about working at larger institutions, right? I may be in New York, I may be in Dallas, I may be in Florida. I could be, in Arizona. And now with Perennial, I have to get out of my bubble. And I was very fortunate up front. I had the conversation with the owners to say, I want to be involved on the national level. I need to stay connected to what's happening outside of the city of Atlanta and what's happening in our industry as a whole. Two things. One, the National Apartment Association and attending their meetings and conferences and giving my time on their committees keeps me involved and aware of what's happening nationally and what's important on those levels. I'm very much looking forward to Cultivate this year. So shout out to NAA for creating an executive level conference where we can have those bigger conversations. But then also, so outside of NAA, how do I stay connected and what do I know what's happening? It's my peer set. Having past relationships, I really do pride myself on the relationships I've maintained over the course of the years as I've changed companies or as companies have changed. And so, I can just pick up the phone and saying, hey, what's going on? What are you guys seeing in DC right now when you're managing assets? What was it like in DC during the social justice movement? How are you guys going about DEI initiatives? What's going on in Hawaii, which is now a member of the National Apartment Association. Very much so looking forward to our first meeting in Hawaii. Just putting that out there. No one's actually said we're going to have any meetings there, but I would love to. It's just, again, that continued network connection. I follow people online. LinkedIn is a great connection source where I can, read and see clips and snippets and keep up with what people's conversations are. But a lot of times I also follow what's happening for humans, period. Not always just industry focused, right? What happens with people's lives? We house the most people in our country, right? Not everyone's a single family homeowner. And it's becoming less and less of the American dream to be a single family homeowner, and even in some cases, unfortunately, less and less the possibility. So we house so many people. So what's happening in people's lives, period, right? When we talk about the increased level of anxiety and people feeling disconnected and less engaged and the need to have a community within communities, right? So oftentimes just hearing what's happening in the world and hearing people's hearts and what their needs and feelings are. And I think my healthcare background really helps that as well, right? Because when I hear certain focuses from a healthcare standpoint as well, and how that connects to people and their feelings and their wants and the desires. So when I hear a human being's pain points, at some point that's going to trickle into our industry and how we operate. And so, right, ESG didn't just show up out of nowhere, right? It just accumulated over time from health and wellness into how we actually house our residents and what kind of environment our residents are living in. Just keeping up with human beings and those approaches and needs have helped me stay well connected and sometimes ahead of the curve on what's happening in our industry.
Quick shout out, as you said, for Hawaii to Jesse Miller, who has done such incredible work over there and is always at the events you mentioned. He's at the national events. He's been at the local events, whether it was in Portland, but now being in Hawaii, setting up that association. So I'm with you. We definitely would love to we have to have an event in Hawaii sometime in the future.
So the first question from the audience is from Larry Belloc. Wants to ask Melissa, how do you keep great talent in an industry where people will leave for a few more dollars?
I recently had a conversation about this, and I think we need to normalize quitting and normalize terminations, right? What does that mean? How do we keep great talent? We want to be great people. If we do business right and we take care of our people and we are authentic in how we operate and how we communicate, our goal is to keep good people. But the reality is some of the best operators, some of the most engaging companies are losing talent because there's an opportunity right now for people to get different experiences and make changes quickly. And I think as companies, we need to be okay with that. We need to welcome and foster an environment where we say, hey, if we don't have what you're looking for today, we know a lot of people, let me help you out. Because what I can tell you, as a smaller operator, who doesn't always have additional titles and positions and things to offer people, what I've noticed is we have a high boomerang effect here at Perennial. We may lose someone, but it's short because they come back and they're like, man, it was not worth that. Whatever, that dollar maybe that you just described. So if you're doing business the right way and you are being thoughtful of your people, right, we have to treat our teams honestly better than we treat our customers. And I'm not the first person to ever say that. I know lots of industries believe that, but we have to actually execute on it. You know, when we talk about housing affordability crisis, we need to be having different conversations about housing we're providing to our team members, right? Our healthcare programs. So again, back to those human necessities and people's ability to not just work and live, but to work and thrive. What experiences they're looking for in life. So first, I think in 2024, we need to be okay to see our talent walk out the door and wish them well, with the knowledge that if we care about them as much as when they leave, it's likely they will return. And then be open to how you believe your best practices are versus what your team's actual experience is. And then actually making a change. We can't always make every change, but we have to make some change to show that they're heard and they're seen, and not be as scared of team members talking to each other. Welcome those conversations and then bring it back and be like, okay, hey, well, all of our leasing professionals are talking to each other and these are the concerns that are coming back, right? And what changes can we make within that? So how do we retain top talent is we operate and we're authentic with who we are and what we say.
I love that. I think there's a local CEO who was on a podcast or he talks about in his video, Garrett Langley at Flock. And he talks about, you're only going to be here a certain period of time. So we want to help you in that journey to help you onto your next challenge or your next company and find you that job. And I think you're right. Like having those difficult conversations, not making them difficult anymore and embracing them. So I really love that. What should training look like for our industry as we evolve this year and into next year?
It needs to be frequent and it needs to be consistent. What does training look like? It needs to be easy to digest. It needs to speak to an array of learners, right? Because we have a variety of generations in the workspace right now. And we want to be appealing to all of those learners. And it needs to be consistent. And there needs to be reference points to go back to, right? So, when we talk about, I'll just stick with fair housing, right? Fair housing is a industry standard and everybody has to do it consistently, but applicable to what people are doing in their day to day. Because, fair housing 20 years ago, it was like, oh, okay, yes. Like, we can't steer people on the property. We can't try to get all the kids into one side of the building and, other sides. And I think in the environment we're in right now, this may be an unpopular opinion, but in the environment we're in right now, I think that there's so many people who are caring and passionate, but miss the connection that, hey, although I may feel connected to children and families, I may not actually understand their experience, right? That's why education has to be consistent and constant, because I believe that so many of us feel connected to one another based on online, and we see all these things, but the reality is, are you engaging? Do you know what it is for, that mother or that father raising someone? So you think you're just saying, oh, great, and we have this and we have that, and, this will be great for, this child's space. And we're not maybe aware that we're actually not a part of that, that situation, right? So education needs to be consistent. And it needs to be easy to digest for people. because we all feel so connected through the internet and through social platforms, and we feel like we're aware. And then you're like, you know what? I've actually never met Oprah. I think I know her because I saw what she had for Thanksgiving and who was at her house. And we start talking about people as if we know them. And so that's why I'm kind of giving that example of someone who maybe feels connected and understands what it is. Even for me as a mother, I should not talk to other women as though I know their experience as a mother. So that's why, again, education needs to be consistent. It needs to be digestible. It needs to speak to people in the way in which they receive. So you can't just have one fair housing course. You need to have a variety of options for people to digest it all at one time in small pieces and have reference back material.
Alisa, one of the things that we don't talk about enough in a society, it's failure, right? I think we should more because it's part of life. It's
Yes.
part of who we are today, right? Like without failure, we wouldn't be the people that we are today. How did a failure or an apparent failure in the past help you or achieve some amazing success down the road?
Before I share my example, I don't know the answer of how we can do this, but we've got to find a way. All of us fail at something or at different stages in our life or at different parts of the week, right? I mean, it's easy today to look at Melissa White and say, wow, and she's married, she has kids, she's the managing director, she's now the first Black female chair of the apartment association. I have made a lot of mistakes along the way. But do I share every failure or mistake? No, because it's hard to get that feedback back when I'm already down, and it's like, oh my gosh, look where I messed up today, or, my husband and I just had the biggest fight ever, you welcome back in people's comments when you're trying to process what happened. But the reality is you don't want people to think that it's always easy all the time, right? So if you're close to me, then you know that my husband and I had that really big argument because, I'm like, listen, this is not always easy, right? Like 20-year relationship, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of conversation, a lot of commitment. But we've got to find a way as a society to be able to share more of those things so that people aren't just like, wow, it's always easy. Like, how does she do it so well? Because it's not. I had brain surgery just less than 2 years ago. And I think for those who saw me on social media, were like, wow, she really just breezed through that. And I didn't. I mentioned at my installation dinner, and I try to drop pieces into other conversations when I talk about, well, I have a great therapist. I have I have all these people in my life. But the reality is I need those structures, right? Because I've battled with depression. I've battled with frustrations and disappointments. I've battled with understanding my own value. That leads back to that get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because sometimes we tell ourselves a story throughout the day. We talk the most to ourselves, and what we say to ourselves is what's going to impact us the most. When you're dealing with a failure or when you're dealing with a delay, what you say to yourself is so vital. And I think it's so important that whatever you're dealing with, you add yet to it. I haven't been promoted yet. I didn't get that increase yet. I haven't bought the house yet. I haven't gone on the dream vacation yet. Because it's going to come, and everything comes in its different time and its different space. And sometimes it feels like, why so long have I waited for this? I keep putting myself out there and I keep failing and I keep getting back up. Like, when is it going to be my win? And so we just have to keep going and making sure we're reminding ourselves of the yet. And that lonely feeling comes oftentimes when we look side to side, right? I oftentimes think of like a race, a swimming laps. And when you slow down to look at the person in the lane next to you to see how far they've come, you miss your momentum and your speed versus just, haven't won yet. Maybe I'm about to win, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I've definitely had perceived failures. I'm excited. I've shared this story before, but I'm excited to share it again because my timing on things may feel like I haven't had any failures, but I have. I've had personal failures. I gave too much of myself to a company or a situation or team or an experience. I gave too much of myself and I allowed myself to feel lost and confused and frustrated. That for me was a personal failure because I have to remind myself that I don't have to give it all away. I get to keep pieces for me and what I want personally and what I want professionally. And there's been times in my career where I've given my all to a company to the detriment of family time, to the detriment of my continued education, to the detriment of even my income. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take less money and I'm going to keep proving myself and I'm going to keep doing what they need me to do. And I didn't ultimately get the recognition, get the promotion, get the accolade. I was really disappointed because I'd given so much of my time to this situation. And it was a perceived failure because really, when I let go of what wasn't even mine to hold on to, I received so much more with open hands than closed hands. I'm holding on to something, trying to make something happen. And when I let go and I opened my hands, I had so many more opportunities come my way and appreciation come my way and exposure come my way, right? Because I've never been a title driven person, although it can seem that way because I'm always chasing curiosity and I want to learn more, like break down that loan agreement for me. I don't want to be an architect, but sometimes in meetings you may think I want to be an architect because I'm asking all the questions, right? About the framing and the load and the carry and how do all these things work. And that's me chasing curiosity and understanding. Perceived failure, I finally realized when I let it go, it wasn't for me to hold on to anyway. There was more for me with open hands.
I love the yet, that hope, the future, and the difficulties. So many great stories there, and I think a lot of people will resonate with these and already do, because I definitely do. I think as you were talking, I was thinking about those who have come before you. Right? You said there's so many people who've come before you and have influenced you. So could you share? We have someone in the audience, and she built a mentorship group that Adrian and I are part of. Maybe you're part of as well. And I wanted to get your thoughts on how important a mentor is in your life. And maybe is there someone that's been incredibly influential in your life? Maybe some people, maybe it's one person, but and why they were so influential.
I heavily believe in mentors. And if you are a mentor, you need a mentor, right? Those who teach have to be fed as well. Mentors are very important because again, it helps with that loneliness. Doesn't mean you're not going to feel lonely. It means when you feel lonely, it means when you feel defeated, there's someone to help you not stay in that space as long, right? To guide you out of it into a more positive, productive space faster and better. So mentors are vital. And if you're going to be a mentor, make sure you have the capacity to do so, to be open, to be vulnerable, to be committed, and define what that mentorship looks like. So I definitely believe in mentors. Again, often times for me in the workspace, this may sound counterintuitive given that I'm like, yes, let's expand diversity and inclusion and belonging and let's make all that happen. For me, I really leaned into having white male mentors so I could understand how we got to where we are. So that for me, I already knew where we needed to go. I already knew what changes we needed to make. But how did we get here? Like, how are we in 2024? And I'm the first Black female of the Atlanta Apartment Association. Like, of all the affiliate members, we would think Atlanta definitely would have had a Black female by now, right? And we've only had one Black male. So I really leaned into white male mentors to understand their perspective and their experience so that I can help establish and navigate through what was needed with change. From a work perspective, I really leaned into that in my personal life, which influences my work and my personal. My mentors are more on my faith-based side, really guiding me again on that purpose-driven versus ego-driven. So those mentors are helpful to keep me grounded and focused, right? And even elevating and understanding. I have a teenager now. I can't believe I have a 14-year-old and I need more help and counseling in raising a 14-year-old boy than through any aspects of my career. I feel like I thought I knew what I thought I knew until he started behaving like a young teenage boy. And you know what I've never been is a young teenage boy. And so I want to be the best mom I can be and where he is and what he needs at this time. So for me, my biggest influence oftentimes comes out of the work environment, because by stepping back and placing my work responsibilities in the bigger picture of life, it's easier for me to have a full picture.
What legacy do you hope to leave in the multifamily industry?
I really hope to leave a legacy where people reference the work that I did it with passion and enthusiasm, but more importantly, that I did it with care, that I cared about all of us elevating together, and not just me, not just Black women, not just any particular group, but for all of us to be able to lift and grow together and be better together. So I really hope that my legacy is that I was able to change the way people think and the way people make decisions that is inclusive of everybody. That's the legacy I hope to leave.
Alisa White, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here with us, for hanging out with us. And also, I want to thank everybody in the audience. You've been amazing today, coming in the highest numbers that we had in like 12 episodes so far since we've been going live. I also want to thank our sponsors that are making this broadcast possible. And our sponsors are Parma Snapshot, Kairos Water, and GPS Roof Leak Repairs. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for hanging out. We hope to see you back here next Thursday. We have another amazing guest. I'm not gonna say who it is, but you gotta come back to find out who that is. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This was amazing.